Hello everyone, and welcome to what is the penultimate lecture in the BECI 2020 series for 2013 and 14. Today, my purpose is to give you a bit of insight into collaboration in the construction industry, and we pose the question, will it work? Hopefully today you'll understand that it touches many stakeholders, and through what insight I give you, hopefully you can make and form your own opinions and you can understand the subject matter better. At this stage, perhaps the quote that I've got up there might be worthy of mention. It's by a guy called Ken Blanchard, who you may know from the 1 Minute Manager fame books that came out, where he talks about collaboration having two characteristics or ingredients, and those ingredients are essence and form, and it's something that I'll return to during the lecture. But predominantly essence is around soft skills such as trust, heartfelt feelings and commitment, whereas form is around structure and process. He argues really that essence is the main driver or the main ingredient of collaboration. So, if we have a look at what we're going to look at today, in the context of the lecture series and the 2025 document, we'll have a look at that. I'll then go on to do some definitions of what I believe collaboration is all about. We'll have a look at some history. We'll then go on to some current thinking on what's out there at the moment with the industry. Something called the British Standard 11,000, which I'll draw everyone's attention to, and BIM. We'll have a quick look at benefits, barriers and critical success factors to collaboration, and then we'll really wrap up around collaborative forms of contract, look at a bit of a conclusion, and I've got some references for those people that want to study further. So in the context of the 2025 document, there are numerous mentions, and there's actually a SWOT analysis done within the document, and in that SWOT analysis, collaboration is recognised as a weakness. It's a weakness on project learning. For many years, I'm sure we would all agree that there's very poor feedback once a project is completed. So they call that collaboration. And they see it as an opportunity, particularly through BIM. Now, I'll come back to BIM and collaboration a bit later on, but perhaps you'd just like to maybe think about that. And they see it as a threat, and that was access to foreign markets. And when you look at that a bit more, it's around fragmentation of the industry in the UK, being more fragmented, they believe, than overseas. There's numerous mentions also on collaboration on process design, supply chains and clients, the industry and education. Maybe we ought to note about the reference to education at this stage. And finally, it says in the document, we have a very good reputation for collaborative forms of contract. This is a terrifically strong base from which to start. And that's with regards to reference to growth, which is a big part of the 2025 document. Again, we'll come back to collaborative forms of contract towards the end of the presentation, and maybe you will form some opinions there. But as a final comment, really, collaboration and integration as words are used and quite often transposed, often and freely. And maybe there's a lack of understanding that collaboration is about behaviour and integration is about process. So let's have a look at some definitions quickly. The top graph there, if you can just about see it, is all about, over a period of time, the use of the word collaboration. If you can't see the x-axis, it's basically saying from about the 1950s, the word collaboration has been used more and more and more. There's two definitions I've given here. One is for a general definition, and then I've given another one for an industry definition. Collaboration is working with each other to do a task and to achieve shared goals. It's a recursive process where two or more people or organisations work together to realise shared goals. This is more than the intersection of common goals seen in cooperative ventures, but a deep collective determination to reach an identical objective. And that's just a Wikipedia quote. With regards to the industry says working together in a seamless team to common objectives that deliver benefit for all through mutually beneficial, i.e. including commercial, alignment. So I've adjusted for emphasis some of the words there, but some of the words that are used regarding collaboration are objectives, recursive and alignment. We may want to dwell a little bit on the fact that the industry definition particularly refers to commercial, and maybe that's an admission of a special case or misalignment of collaboration in a non-collaborative world. But finally, an excellent perspective on collaboration is actually, if anyone's interested, in watching Jimmy Welsh, who's the founder of Wikipedia. There's lots of things going on in that video, which I have as a reference at the end, that talks about what constitutes good collaborative behaviour. So now for our brief history lesson. I'm sure most people are aware of the Constructing Excellence history chart that shows the noticeable reports regarding construction. And I think now we need to probably add the Government Construction Strategy 2011, the 2025 document which these lectures are all about, and I would suggest British Standard 11,000 in terms of collaboration. Over a period of time, I think it's probably true to say that the word collaboration has morphed from words such as cooperation, partnering and integration. So let's have a quick look. We'd have to start our history lesson really with looking at Latham in '94. And what did they say about, or what did he say about collaboration in 1994? Well, it's actually, the word is actually mentioned 3 times, twice relating to education, and interestingly, partnering is mentioned numerous times. And the area where it's not in the education definition, it was specialist engineering contractors believe that better collaboration in design between consulting engineer and specialist could produce a target cost saving of 20%. But if you actually look at the document and want to read it with a different lens, if you like, as you're reading it, it could constitute that what it's actually asking for is behavioural change. So that was 1994, and if we wind ourselves on for 9 years, I think we were starting to understand as an industry what collaboration was all about. In 2003, 9 years on, the industry was beginning to get it right. There was a lot more mention of the word collaboration, but particularly it was talking about collaboration around stakeholders. So I've used the term really, is the question that the Strategic Forum was asking in 2003, was it all about stakeholder integrated collaboration? And then again in 2003, there was the Strategic Forum produced a document that showed what they believed to be the constituent parts of good collaboration. And here it talked about committed leadership, and for the first time, culture and values, and then process, tools and commercial arrangements. They're the items that are in the 3 green boxes at the top. We will return to commercial arrangements and behaviour a bit later, but I think it's an important point to note that the 3 parts or constituents to collaborative behaviour at this stage were actually clearly defined by the Strategic Forum. So perhaps the question that needs to be asked is, does the nature of culture of our industry, and I would suggest we have a can-do attitude, actually always skew us over to the right of the diagram, i.e. towards process, tools and commercial arrangements? And we tend to forget about committed leadership and culture and values. Then in 2006, this is the final slide on history, we really did start to come up with some really sexy words around collaboration. We started to talk about social capital. We talked about structural, relational and cognitive areas of social capital. Social capital is all influenced by these 3 factors. and also by methods of procurement. We moved much closer in 2006, probably to what collaboration is all about today. So let's get a bit more up to date. In terms of current thinking, I took around 2011 as a sort of a watershed. And you can probably see from this slide that actually we were again getting it right. There was a clear definition of what collaborative working was all about, albeit that it still used or still highlighted the need for commercial arrangements. It used 3 overriding principles, which were basically from the 2006 document, and then it started to look at 6 critical success factors. So it does still mention commercial, it does have overriding principles, and it did identify critical success factors. Perhaps educational establishments need to be asking how and if we're informing students of the need to understand collaborative culture and behaviours. After all, behaviour affects outcomes. So it brings me on to, really, British Standard 11,000. And maybe looking outside of our industry is the answer. BECI 11,000 is a British standard relating to collaborative business relationships for industry in general. I can only find 2 contractors that have had accreditation of BECI 11,000, and they're Costain and Lakesmere. And I would imagine that they probably have this accreditation because clients have driven them to that. So it's an excellent, as far as I'm concerned, it's an excellent British standard in 2 parts. The parts I want you to understand and maybe dwell upon is that it focuses on relationships and how individuals come together collaboratively and have the right leadership, objective, trust and value creation outlook. The guide forms a workbook to build up a collaborative relationships. It focuses on 3 levels, which are up on the board: strategic, engagement and management. And it uses the concepts of maturity and exit strategy, which I thought was quite interesting. When it talks about concept and maturity, it's talking about organisations and people being ready to collaborate. And there's almost like a health check that they have to go through before they can consider themselves worthy of collaborating. And then in terms of exit strategy, that was also another interesting thing from my part, because you're actually planning to stop. And for those people that may have looked at teamwork and team dynamics, there is a school of thought that high-performing teams actually expire. So it is a recent BS. I haven't found any references between this BS and, if you like, construction projects that are being used, especially in research. I haven't seen anything. And indeed, the Building Magazine webinar that was held on the 2nd of May 2013 on BIM culture and collaboration made no reference to this BS. So what is it all about, really? Well, it's all about being a multi-dimensional sort of process, which it clearly identifies, and it says it can be 1 or more participant. It very much centres around relationship management. So it has what they call a relationship management plan, and I would suggest this is a key and fundamental foundation for the operation of the British Standard. It gives out some principal components, which are all to do with the 3 levels of strategic engagement and management. And then, for the first time that I've seen in anything, it actually highlights competencies and behaviours that are needed for collaborative working. It is a document that can be used in a project environment. It very much lends itself to a project environment and very much to a business-to-business environment rather than a business-to-consumer. In terms of a BS, I would say it's probably about as good as it gets. So another hot topic at the moment, BIM. Maybe some current thinking on the role of BIM and collaboration. Well, I'd just like to pose this, really. BIM is an integrative tool that promotes and facilitates collaboration. the documentation on BIM, it doesn't refer to or follow the British standard. But what I do believe it would do, in terms of BIM, it does free up individuals' time to concentrate on collaborative behaviours and the interface with the British standard. So I do believe they go together. And it poses the question, really, could there be a place for BIM and the BS to coexist as a combined framework for dealing with collaboration and integration in the construction industry? We seem to have got two very good things going on. So just a quick look at benefits. These are from various publications. Collaboration tends to meet stated objectives right first time, predictability of cost, time and quality. Long-term relationships through mutual trust can progress. It removes limitations on solutions and thinks through closer relationships. It reduces waste, that's surplus, duplicated and generated waste. It reduces reworking. It can be a source of competitive advantage. It can provide better design management and whole life understanding. And there is a sense of enjoyment and success and empowerment and consultative environments for individuals. It can add value through risk allocation and management, economies of scale and repetition, and it can have individual involvement. And this extract is an extract from the BS where it talks about what they consider to be the benefits of collaboration. Most of those that are in the BS have actually highlighted before. So what about barriers? Well, I'm afraid this is a series of questions I might ask people, really. First of all, it's our culture, the industry's culture. Can we change our approach? Can we change our approach at any level? And when I talk about any level, I'm talking about the project or projects or organisation or industry level. And are we really individuals who can give things up? Excuse me. Do we really trust individuals and stakeholders? So there's an element of trust. Standard forms do not promote collaboration in contracts. We tend to be silo and remedy orientated, not collaborative and value rewards driven. Question also is there a critical mass relating to collaboration and project size? As we go through these, you might want to think about ranking them and find out which ones you think are the biggest barriers. Objectives. Do we really set them? Are they set multilaterally, not common multilateral, or if at all possible, universal? We still in the main work to our own agendas. Training. Management and industry leaders of the future need to understand collaboration. There's a need for education and training. And transparency of data to measure performance. There is a reluctance by supply chains, usually to provide standardisation of data, which will allow some sort of degree of measurement performance. And then finally, fragmentation. You know, as I said, at the industry, organisational, project or team and individual levels, in reality, this rarely occurs. And if we're honest, the vast majority of the work in construction is done on sites by individuals. So what are the critical success factors? Well, I've come up with 6. Those are communication, trust, leadership, and something that I call contractual polarity, which is all about outcomes and behaviours. So it's no good in imposing collaboration and having a form of contract that doesn't promote it. So there's a polarity between the behaviour that you require and the form of contract you've got. Having said that, I don't think there's any reason why collaboration can't exist to a degree on any project. And the degree to which it exists depends in part on the form of contract and the client's attitude to collaboration. I'm sure, you know, in the example I gave earlier on, Costain were driven to get a collaborative BS kite mark, mainly because Network Rail wanted them to do it. It's relationship-centric, and there's a need for training and education. So let's have a quick look at the forms of contract. Well, a brief word really. Is there a link between good collaborative behaviour and the collaborative forms of contract? Clearly, as I said, what I've called contractual polarity helps. And the diagram up there shows that from the RICS Contracts in Use Survey in 2012, which is for projects in 2010, shows that when it comes to numbers of contracts, the use of what we would consider to be the collaborative forms, such as the ACA and the NEC, are morphed, and some that are morphed into the JCT, are low, they're extremely low, and have decreased from the 2007 survey. So what's actually going on between 2007 and 2010 is there are less and less collaborative forms of contract being used. Now that may be a sign of the times. And indeed, collaborative forms of contract tend to have higher contract values. Again, this source is from the RICS Contracts in Use Survey, and again, it's down from 2007. So what about collaborative working? Well, the RIBA MBS survey in 2013 asked about what form collaboration takes. Now, collaborative working can happen on any contract form and take many forms, as I said, and can vary in degrees of existence. It's the degree or essence that is variable, often driven by clients, and chosen form of contract. So basically what the chart is saying is that most people that choose to take on board collaborative forms of behaviour actually back it up with a collaborative form of contract. Just to give you some idea, whilst I don't think partnering is necessarily a true reflection of collaboration, in actually this survey, in the 2012 RICS survey on page 6, it said that the partnering forms of contract constituted 2% in value and 2% in number of contracts that were used in 2010. So we're only talking about a very small amount of partnering projects that have partnering forms of contracts. And what I'm suggesting is if there is a direct link between that and collaborative working, we're only talking about 2% of the industry. So very briefly then, conclusion on where we are at the moment. Well, with regards to this series of lectures, I have to refer back to the Construction 2025, and rather disappointingly really, it does not use collaboration as a strategic aim. It's used to support aims and doesn't take centre stage. I think that's a bit of a shame. Hopefully I've demonstrated that the industry has called for collaborative behaviour for well over 20 years. And can the industry support such ways of working given its nature and culture? I go back to this can-do attitude and the skewing to the right of an earlier slide. 20 years on from Latham, we still need to change. Have we hastily missed the point and now need re-educating? Have we become process-driven and therefore looking to new entrants into the industry and the role of education and training to promote collaboration? There's an abundance of industry information, but is the British standard the way forward? Could it remove confusion in industry rhetoric? And does fragmentation prevent adoption? There are new forms of collaborative contracts, such as the NEC, PPC, CIOB and the JCT, but how often are they used? And there seems to be a critical mass in terms of project size, duration and suitability. Construction is a people-orientated industry, and it's difficult to make people behave. They need to do it naturally. Returning back to essence and form and Ken Blanchard, they are very, very different. People are not made to behave in a certain way collaboratively. On Wikipedia, they do so of their own volition. And what about the accreditation similar to quality, safety and environmental for construction companies, which may emphasise collaboration more widely within organisations? The subject of collaboration is complex, and do we have the capability and skills in behaviour, that's the essence that Blanchard refers to take the contracts and BS 11,000, that's the form, to the team and individual levels where it all happens in construction? Overall, it's about relationships, behaviour and process. It's a whole concept. But things definitely are changing, and probably more than ever, with a rising economy, it will be interesting to see future trends in collaboration. Thank you very much. Thank you. Lots of questions, no doubt. Yes, Martin.
You put barriers up there.
Yep.
I think you missed one, maybe wrong.
Sure.
Client.
Yep.
Because you also said client drove these people into the BS 1000 collaborative contract.
Yep.
Right? Well, is collaboration about driving? And your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think maybe I had leadership up there. Which is really what I was trying to get to, was that what I would call would be from a client's point of view. So leadership from clients is what's required, because that is exactly, you are exactly right, that's exactly where Costain, I'm sure, found themselves with Network Rail. The driving of collaborative forms of contract and behaviour need to come from somewhere else. The only thing I might say to that is that in terms of competitive edge, if contractors and other members or stakeholders in our industry took the initiative, they may have a competitive edge in the marketplace over other contractors that don't have a BS 11,000.
It could happen, but in that case for Network Rail, you're only restricted to one or two contractors.
Sure.
So when you talk about competitive edge, they already know those contractors. They may even be on a framework. Why they? This is where the culture and the client comes in.
Yeah.
And I think we're too busy looking down at the industry or looking over at the industry as opposed to taking this integration.
Sure.
And letting that to the middle. So it's just
Ian, you've got so much experience of the industry itself. Did you see collaboration? Did you ever experience it?
Yeah, I did.
And what is your own take on collaboration? What do you believe? What you read?
My take on collaboration is really what I said towards the end, Stephen, which is you can't make people collaborate. It's just, you just can't do it. I've been on contracts that have lump sum, very difficult contracts, full of risk, full of difficulties, and unless you collaborate, you're not going to get anywhere. And it comes down at the end of the day to individuals and people, and I think, you know, one of my points is we tend to be process-driven rather than relationships and individuals. And you know, there are, don't get me wrong, there are difficulties and horror stories in collaborative forms of contracts going wrong. So it's not suggesting that it's all a foregone conclusion, but it's all around people and behaviour.
You see, it seems to me that one of the things that you didn't discuss at all was the power aspect of this, the power relations. So you have collaboration, you have a main contractor and a subcontractor. The subcontractor is desperate, has no power, you know, the main contractor. So how can you actually achieve collaboration when power is so unequally distributed? Common goals, who benefits? How are the common goals agreed? The benefits, how are they shared? All of these problems are at the back of everybody's mind.
Yeah, and I think that's where the step change needs to happen. You know, and that's when people need to start thinking differently about when they engage in a building contract, because that is very much the traditional way of looking at things, which is, you know, a hierarchical sort of structure where silo mentality works, where the client just wants what he wants, the main contractor just wants to give the client what he wants, and the subcontractors will do as they're told. And, you know, that's not a good recipe for collaborative behaviour. So it's what you paint is really what the industry is like, and that's what needs to change. And that's why I say it's not necessarily process, it's more to do with individuals and behavioural change.
feel that the term collaboration is like a modern term for partnering?
Yeah, well,
You think the industry itself was, the term partnering was around a good few years ago, and it sort of started to operate and then bond. Is this another partnering term for today?
well, I started by putting up history and saying collaboration, a new word for partnering. And the further I got into it, I actually believe collaboration and partnering are completely different things. And that's why I sort of was guarded around saying about the partnering forms of contract being a direct indication of the use of collaboration. And the reason for that is partnering is about a relationship you have, not necessarily around behaviour. So I do believe that partnering can promote collaborative behaviours, but it doesn't mean that they're mutually inclusive. So when Latham and everybody called for partnering, they were talking about firms working together. Well, you can work together with a firm because you do when you partner with as a main contractor with an M&E subcontractor. That's partnering maybe, and there might be a special relationship there as to workload and the like. But it doesn't mean to say that it's good collaborative behaviour. And I could give examples of that actually, because I've experienced what I would consider to be good collaborative behaviour in main contractor and subcontractor relationships that actually are not partnering.
Yeah, I take the point that the gentleman said there. In the industry is hierarchy. You've got main contractor, squeezing the subcontractor, and then squeezes
Subcontractors.
subcontractors and the people that are actually hammering the nails on the wall.
Sure.
Is that ever going to change? Are we actually trying to change something that will never change?
I think you have a very good point, and that is exactly where I am in terms of the culture of the industry. Because at the end of the day, you paint the picture very well. You know, the collaborative form in a contract, or the collaborative behaviours you need in the contract, is the man that's banging the nail in the wall, knowing why he's doing it and collaborating to get all sorts of things done. And that very rarely happens on construction sites.
To a certain degree, I would disagree ever so slightly. The man banging the nail in the wall probably does more collaboration than powers the people at the top. Because he works around his neighbour who might be from a completely different firm or whatever. But they probably collaborate more so than powers the grown-ups.
I couldn't agree with you more in terms of that way. I'm talking about collaboration through the contract, through the project, from the hierarchy down to the tradespeople. The collaboration there usually fragments and gets lost. I do agree with you that tradespeople are very good at collaborating horizontally, if you like, very much so. Rob. No. I think possibly the environment of the construction industry makes them less positive around it.
Okay, so what's stopping them?
I think the litany of years and years worth of cultural activity in the construction industry where...
I think there is a general perception that the younger generation is much more collaborative in nature.
Indeed. I hope so, but I wonder how much to just keep banging up against the same old stuff. There's just, we just put Latham up 1994. You know, we all do it, don't we? We all talk about Latham. You know, that's a hell of a long time ago now.
In terms of clients then, and then pushing things, if they were to adopt BECI 11,000 or a collaborative contract, what would you suggest would be the more effective for them?
Between the two,
yeah.
BS 11,000.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we go back to if you watch the Ken Blanchard video, it's very, very good, and the Jimmy Welsh one on collaboration. But if you look at the Blanchard one from about 7.5 minutes, he talks about this essence and form, and you've just done it yourself. You know, I think there's essence, absolute essence in the BS. The form is the contract. You know.
If all participants in the industry become BS 11,000, is that going to mean?
I think that would be a bit of a step change. I don't know whether it would get anywhere near where Utopia or Shangri-La, but it certainly would go a long way. But you know, that's with a guarded comment, Rob, that you obviously know that people that have a British Standard kite mark for quality aren't necessarily the best people to do quality.
I'm not against collaboration. In fact, nothing would ever have been built in the past or is being built today without collaboration. Firms clearly collaborate in the construction process. But while on the one hand you have this need for collaboration or you don't get paid, at the same time there's a very strong centrifugal force that's throwing people apart. And that is perhaps because of the nature of the construction industry, which means that you have a tender, you win a tender, you've got a price, and then it's a zero-sum game where one gains and the other loses at their share, loses part of their share of that contract price. And so they're set up like in a dog pit to fight each other, to fight each other. So I'm not against collaboration, but I think that one has to realise there are real contradictions within and paradoxes within the construction process.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's again a traditional view. Yeah. You know, a view that exists at the moment. Yeah, but that's a traditional view, and you're absolutely right about this centrifugal force that flings everybody to the four corners of the earth and never to talk again or never to collaborate. And I did mention that in terms of a few slides where, you know, that's the sort of thing of the way that the industry is silo mentality, and its natural tendency is to do that. And you know, I haven't spoken about the fact that collaboration can go much further than just the project itself. You know, it can go on in terms of time, way beyond the project's duration. So, you know, collaboration early on, a good example that I heard a little while ago, you know, and you start to talk about value management and value engineering, but good collaboration was at Heathrow when they mentioned that if we sighted cameras in a certain way, we might have to have 5 more cameras, but we can reduce the amount of guarding, permanent and static guarding we've got, by the fact that we can put cameras in a certain place. Now, maybe there was a form of collaboration to get to that point. People weren't siloed in terms of their knowledge, experience and data regarding what they could do. Any more?